cold metal against her palm. That was the first thing she registered, the knife hilt already in her hand before her mind caught up to why. Then, a change in the air, a pressure shift no monitor in this station was built to notice. Three shapes had entered her room without triggering a single alarm, and whoever authorized that had access no ordinary cadet possessed. She would spend the rest of her life able to name the exact texture of that half-second. The dry click of a safety disengaging, the smell of ozone from a charged rifle, before she understood who had sent them, or why a man with 4 eyes and a spotless service record wanted her dead badly enough to risk his career on it. To understand that, you have to go back 3 weeks, to a morning when nobody at the academy believed Mira Stone was worth killing. She'd been running obstacle drills before dawn, posting a time that would stand as a record for months, and Commander Vexthara had watched the feed with his mandibles clicking in something between contempt and boredom. Deathworlders, he told Lieutenant Zorg, not troubling to lower his voice. The Academy takes anyone now, it seems. Zorg, to his credit, mentioned her scores, top of her cohort in tactics. Vexthara waved it away the way you'd wave away an insect. Numbers on a page proved nothing. Combat would. He got his combat 3 days later, when Sergeant Kelpar sent her into Simulation Room 7 against 3 of the program's best. Raven, a Sarian whose scales shifted color with his temper. Tam Brightwater, a Luminian who could walk through solid matter for as long as his lungs allowed. And Viga, a Mantari with reflexes that made most training partners look like they were standing still. 3 against 1, Raven said, claws already out, grinning at what he assumed was an easy afternoon. Try not to cry. Mira laughed instead, loud, delighted, entirely wrong for the room, and the sound cost Tam his aim. He fired from a rooftop, certain his position was invisible. She'd been tracking the glow of him through 2 floors of false wall the whole time, and answered with a chunk of rubble that dropped him where he stood. Viga came next, fast enough that her strike should have ended things, except Mira wasn't retreating. She was closing distance, and a body moving toward you breaks every calculation built for a body moving away. The Mantari's claws found air. Mira's fist found her thorax, and the crack of exoskeleton giving way echoed off the walls. That left Raven, scales flashing furious red, talons opening a shallow line across her shoulder before she caught his wrist mid-strike. Bleed easy, don't we? She said, watching her own blood run down her arm like it was someone else's. Then she leaned into the lock, and his forearm broke with a sound the simulation's speakers did nothing to soften. He didn't get up again. 7 minutes, 43 seconds. A new record, and 3 unconscious cadets who outmassed her combined. Vexthara summoned her that afternoon. He didn't call it a reprimand. He called her methods brutal, her instincts primitive, her species' whole design a relic of some ancient, ugly world that had no business surviving contact with civilization. She told him wars weren't won on protocol. He told her that kind of thinking had already ended civilizations once. Neither of them blinked. You're not afraid we're barbaric, she said, before he dismissed her. You're afraid we're better than you at the thing you built your whole career pretending not to need. He didn't answer. He was already reaching for his comm unit before she'd cleared the door. Which brings us back to 3:47 hours, and 3 men in stolen security uniforms who thought a sleeping Deathworlder would be an easy kill. She wasn't. The first went down before his second shot could clear its housing, her blade finding the gap beneath his ribs. The second doubled over her knee and lost his rifle. The third begged for a deal even as the one she'd dropped reached, unnoticed, for a sidearm, and put 3 bolts into her before she reached him. Shoulder, leg, gut. Each one should have ended it. Instead, something old and furious came awake behind her ribs, and she hit the last assassin so hard they went through the reinforced door together in a shriek of buckling ally. She walked to the command center on legs that shouldn't have held her, blood marking every wall she touched, the corridor lights washing everything the color of an emergency that hadn't been called off yet. Vexthara was waiting like he'd expected nothing else. Cadet Stone, he said, I see you've had some trouble. 3 of your people tried to put a hole in my skull. Security personnel. I'm sure there's some misunderstanding. His mandibles clicked, amusement, or something close to it. Regrettable if any of them acted on concerns I may have expressed about your temperament. There's footage. There's always footage. The dormitory level suffered a system failure at 3:45. Quite a coincidence. His hand drifted toward the pistol on his desk. We should talk about whether you have a place here at all after tonight. We should, she smiled, and something in his four eyes finally understood how much trouble he was in. From the vest under her ruined shirt, she drew a small recorder, its light steady, its memory core full. Every word since I walked in, including your confession about the system failure, including the part where you admitted you knew. That's not possible. Recorders are forbidden in. Unless a cadet's opening an investigation into a threat on her life. Read the regulations sometime. She crossed the last of the distance between them and closed her hand around his wrist before the pistol could clear the desk. 3 assassins couldn't kill me tonight. What made you think you'd do better? I'm not trying to kill you, he hissed. I'm trying to save this academy from what you represent. And what's that? The end of the order that built it. The doors gave way before he could reach for anything else, security flooding in behind Captain Rex Starfall, whose weapon found the space between them and stayed there. Commander, step back from the cadet. He didn't wait for compliance. We've had your comms flagged for a week. Cadet Voss brought us a pattern, harassment, sabotage, 3 names that don't appear on any duty roster tonight. Commander Vexthara, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. You're making a mistake, Vexthara said, and for the first time his voice cracked open, no calculation left in it at all. They'll unmake everything we built. Maybe, Mira said, letting his wrist go. At least we'll be honest about it. The medics who treated her that night kept using the word remarkable, at the blood loss she should have died from, at a heart rate already steadying by the time they'd finished sealing the shoulder wound. Most species would be in a coma, the physician told her, half fascinated and half unnerved, and she just shrugged, because explaining a death world to someone who'd never lived on one took longer than the wound had taken to heal. Word of that night moved through the academy faster than any official report could catch it. The corridors changed around her without her doing anything to earn it this time. Instructors who'd once looked past her started meeting her eyes. Cadets from 3 other species who'd faced their own quiet harassment came forward once they saw someone had survived speaking up. The investigation into Vexthara pulled up 2 more officers under him within the week, and the human program that had barely tolerated her existence a month earlier was rewritten with oversight measures nobody could quietly undo again. By the time she stood for her final combat exam 3 weeks later, the cadets watching her weren't whispering about barbarism anymore. 5 instructors, veterans from a dozen worlds, came at her at once in a live-fire exercise meant to break anyone still standing. She dropped the last of them in 4 minutes and 31 seconds, breathing hard, unhurt, and the silence that followed wasn't fear this time. It was something closer to reckoning. The command track is yours, if you want it, Starfall told her afterward, and this time the applause around her held nothing but respect. No hesitation in it, no cadets glancing sideways to see how they were supposed to react. Kira Voss caught her in the corridor outside, silver skin catching the light spilling through the viewing ports behind her, the galactic core scattered out past the glass like something too vast to be afraid of anymore. So, Kira said, ready to change the galaxy. Mira turned the recorder over once in her palm, the same one, its light long since gone dark, its work already done, and slipped it back into her vest before she answered. Yeah, she said, watching the stars instead of her friend. I think I am.